So first of all, what is a rhombus? Rhombi is plural for rhombus. So what is a rhombus? Well, by definition, it is a parallelogram with all four sides congruent. And so because it's a parallelogram, it has all of the same properties of a parallelogram. So yes, it's different because all four sides are congruent, and parallelograms don't have to have that. But then opposite sides are congruent, obviously. That's true of parallelograms, but if all four sides are congruent, that means that the opposite sides are congruent. Opposite sides are parallel, so that's that's a definition of a parallelogram, is opposite sides are parallel. Opposite angles are congruent. So this angle is congruent to this angle is congruent to this angle. Consecutive angles are supplementary. So like this angle plus this angle is 180, this angle plus this angle is 180. And the diagonals bisect each other. And that's true of all parallelograms. So there are two additional characteristics or properties about rhombi, and they have to do with their diagonals. So they distinguish it. This distinguishes it from other parallelograms. So the new properties for diagonals of a rhombus are that the diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular to each other. So they're perpendicular to each other, and they bisect the opposite angles. So this angle is bisected and this angle is bisected, and remember these two angles, these two full angles were congruent. So then this little angle is congruent to this little angle, but it's also congruent to these little angles over here. And then the diagonal also bisects these two angles, these opposite angles. So these two opposite angles are congruent, but then their pieces have been, or the angles have been bisected, so they're the smaller angles are all congruent to each other here. In this example problem, the diagonals of the rhombus WXYZ intersect at V, and we're going to do a couple things. The first problem I want us to do is if the measure of angle WZX equals 39.5, then we're going to find the measure of angle ZYX. So WZX is right here, and that's 39.5. And I want to find the measure of angle ZYX over here. So remember, the diagonals of a rhombus bisect the angle, so this angle would also be 39.5 degrees. So this whole angle, so the measure of angle WZY is 39.5 plus 39.5, which is 79. And then because it's a parallelogram, consecutive angles are supplementary. So to find this angle, ZYX, I have to do 180 minus 79, which is 101. So the answer to my question is the measure of angle ZYX equals 101. And the next example problem I want to do is dealing with segments. So if WX equals, let's say, 8x minus 5, and WZ equals 6x plus 3, I want to find x. So let's see. WX is right here. WZ is right here, and in a rhombus all the sides are congruent. So that means I can set 8x minus 5 equal to 6x plus 3 and solve for x. Subtract 6x, I get 2x, add 5, I get 8, and I get x equals 4. So the answer to my question is x equals 4. So let's talk about the super special parallelogram. The super special parallelogram is a square. A square is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. So a square is not only a parallelogram, it is also a rhombus because it has 4 congruent sides, and it's also a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. So it is like the superstar quadrilateral. It's all 3 of these. So that means it has properties that all 3 of these have. So it has a whole bunch of properties, which are all 4 sides are congruent. It has 4 right angles, so all 4 sides are congruent. It has 4 right angles, which means opposite sides are congruent. Opposite sides are parallel. Opposite angles are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary. Diagonals bisect each other. And that's true of all parallelograms. But because it's a rectangle, the diagonals are congruent to each other. And because it's a rhombus, the diagonals are perpendicular to each other. And because it's a rhombus, the diagonals bisect the angles. So if it bisects the angles, and all the angles are 90 degrees, that means each little angle is 45 degrees. So a square is a super quadrilateral. Super. Okay, so that's it for this video. Good luck on the practice problems, and let me know if you have any questions.